Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the Monday, February 3rd work session for the Cabarrus County Board of Education. And at this time, I would like a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved.
Mr. Chairman, before we move forward, I'd like to amend the agenda to include discussions on the Mount Pleasant Middle School, the scope of work, and the architect selection that we need to be talking. So I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shue. We have a motion to amend the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have an amended agenda, so I need a motion to adopt the amended agenda.
I move for approval.
I have a motion and I need a second. And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will move forward with the amended agenda. We will make the new item 3.10. We'll just do that at the very end. Okay, so first up, items for consideration at the February 10th business meeting for our board. And we will welcome Ms. Kelly Klutz to the podium for 3.01 budget amendments.
It'll work better if I turn on the microphone, won't it? Good afternoon. We'll review the budget amendments. We'll start with the state. There's the normal state reimbursement for substitute salaries that we're receiving, obviously an increase. We'll also record our school resource officer grant. That's rounds 1 and 2 of the grant. We've also applied for round 3, and we'll be notified within the next couple of weeks whether we get round 3. But for the rounds 1 and 2, we've been awarded $368,000 from the state. We'll do a matching of $130,000, and you'll see that in the local budget amendment. Are there any questions on the state? Okay. We'll go on to the local budget amendment, which is the next one, and this is where I'm allocating, just reclassing the money so that we can pay the school resource officers and the matching grant for that. Okay.
May I, Mr.
Yes.
Chair, may I ask a question about
sure.
that? So you're reclassifying from salaries and benefits to contracted services. So whose salaries and benefits are we reducing?
No, when those are, so I budget enough dollars. So when we go through our budget process, as we're going through now in January, February, March, we are doing our budget based on projections. Everything that we do, we don't have a state budget approved in that early. We don't have a local budget approved, and we have state projections for ADM. And so our state dollars are given to us based on the projected ADM. So when we adopt the budget July the 1st, those are all based on estimated numbers. In for the better of the first or second month's ADM is how we know what the dollars we will actually get. And so that's October, November before we finalize those numbers. And then after that, we'll have a better read of how much money we'll actually get or how much money we have to return to the state. So I have to budget and be conservative on how much I'm holding back because of what we may have to return to the state or what we may have to pay to charter schools. And so those are dollars that I've allocated because I knew there would be a purpose for them, whether they would go back to the state or whether we would need those for salaries. And so those are dollars we do not have positions allocated for, but those are in the budget. So once we've got our true ADM numbers, and we do now, and once we also know the financial condition based on the audit and the audit's complete, I can accurately depict what monies are available for us to allocate to different resources like this.
Okay, but since this is coming from the local funds, we're not obligated to use that money for salaries. Is that right? It's not like it was the state that said you have to use this money for a teacher.
No, sir. These are local funds, and we can move within outside of budget. Outside of function.
Hypothetically, if I could get other board members to agree with me, we could use that $130,000 to address other facilities needs, repairs, so forth, instead of this.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, may not be at a majority here, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm in a unique position because of who I married. I married a woman who was a police officer and then was an elementary school teacher. So she's been in both jobs. One of the places where she was elementary school teacher was in one of the toughest most crime-ridden neighborhoods in the city of Houston. And they did not have a school resource officer there. She's now works in elementary school in our system, and she thinks that it will be a misuse of funds, and that the elementary school resource officers will be extremely bored. And that I think, based on her feedback to me, that it would be better for us to allocate this $130,000, which I assume is going to be a recurring expense. It's not just a one-time deal.
It's a recurring expense.
Towards making some necessary improvements to our elementary schools to make them more secure. Things as simple as putting blinds on the windows and doors of our schoolrooms, which are supposed to be there in order to have to block the site when we have a lockdown. So if there is a perpetrator outside, they cannot look in and see if we have children in those rooms. So I, for one, would like at least this one amendment to be on, not on the consent agenda, but I want to vote against it.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. We will put the budget amendments on the action agenda. And I've got some thoughts on some of what you said, and I know Ms. Carpenter does as well, and she's not here, so we will just have that discussion next week. And for the viewing audience and everybody here, Ms. Carpenter is not feeling well, so she will not be here tonight. So, okay, board members, any other comments on at least amendment number 2 before we move to number 4?
Ms. Klutz,
Yes.
if there is a second grant or another wave of grants, will it be from the state fund portion on page 1, will there be an equivalent of this local reallocation as well, so that there would be several waves of
Yes,
these
sir.
decisions, and the proposal Dr. Phillips is making might have more able to be allocated toward that or other concerns over time?
The state grant is a 2-for-1 matching grant. So the state will pay $2 and local is asked to pay $1. So when you apply for the grant, that's what we were expected to do. The state, when they award $2, they expect you to pay $1. So if we do not accept the matching portion, we'll have to forfeit the state amount.
Gotcha.
But yes, sir, it's the same matching for the third round.
You were saying that we don't necessarily anticipate, but we have applied for.
We have applied
Additional
for, and we
grants.
expect to get some. We've applied for 9 more. We don't know how many of the 9, but we do expect to get at least
So
some.
we would have an accumulation of this classification of funds.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number 4.
Okay. Okay, so the federal budget amendment is next. Essentially, we're just taking the Title II allocation, improving teacher quality, that we receive a planning allotment at the beginning of the federal funds, and then you get to the actual allotment, and it's a reduced amount. So we're just adjusting our books to the actual allotment.
Okay, any questions on that one? Okay, hearing none, I think what we should do, if the board agrees, is maybe is it okay if we would do number 3 and number 4 on the consent and just have number 2 as an action item?
Chairman.
I assume we can split these up.
Kiger, I'm not finished with the budget amendment.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm just ready to keep moving.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's a capital outlay budget amendment. We're allocating the funds for the Central Cabarrus turf. Those were allocated at the county level a while ago, and so we're ready to issue that contract on that. So that's why they're here before you today, just to get that on the books.
Kelly, just one quick question on that. What was I see $265,000. Is that the part that we got from the county?
Yes, sir.
Or does that include what we gave?
No, that's
and
just the
just
part.
as the part we got from the county?
All the
Okay.
other dollars are allocated in our
Because
budget.
I've been questioned about this. That's why I wanted to get clarity, because we deal with, as you know, so many things. But what we actually gave, the school system gave, was $65,000,
And there was also a $30,000.
The $30,000 that we
So it'd be
gave
95.
because of the needs from the athletic department at Central, and it was their choice, I believe, to add that to the $65,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
But
that-
we gave it to them for the repairs and bleachers and all the different things that they wanted to do, that big long list. And but I just wanted to get the public clarification on it that, you know, we didn't fund all of that. We funded $65,000. We gave $30,000 to Central for the items that they asked us for, bleachers and bathrooms and all those type things. But the county gave the $265,000, and this is just showing the accountability for that money. Is that right?
That's correct. And the Booster Club also made a financial commitment to this project.
Right. Okay.
Don't want to leave them out.
I just wanted to get that for the viewing audience and also for the public.
And we also maybe make a reminder, there was a fairly substantial grant that was obtained to keep the cost of the field down.
Oh,
By,
absolutely.
I think it was about $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, I'm being told. So yes, there was a substantial grant on top of the funds that were
Absolutely.
done. So, okay. Any other comments?
And just a point of clarification, on this particular outlay, does our vote tonight allow Central Cabarrus to start getting the turf
It's already
project going?
It's already been started.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
When
we're
the
not,
county approved it.
we're not voting.
Oh, all right.
No.
This is the work session.
I beg your pardon.
But that's okay.
It'll come up.
But we'll
Thank you.
we'll take, this is just the accounting cleanup of what's the work that's already been done.
Thank you.
Okay. So the last one, the final one, is the local special fund, which is the fund where we record our grants. There's a $40,000 amount where we received the Confucius Classroom Grant for 4 schools: Harrisburg Elementary, Cox Mill Elementary, Hickory Ridge Middle, and Hickory Ridge High. Each received $10,000 each. And there, we also are recording the Jimmy Johnson Grant from the Jimmy Johnson Foundation, and these funds were allocated for the track at Northwest Cabarrus High School.
Okay, board members, any comments on the last item? Hearing none. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Can I just suggest that we put item Amendment 3, Amendment 4, Amendment 3 on the capital outlay fund, and Amendment 3 on the special fund, all on the consent agenda, and leave Amendment number 2 to the local fund on the action agenda?
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Ms. Monroe, are you okay with that? You clear? Okay, fantastic. Well, moving on. Thank you, Ms. Klutz.
Thank you very much. I'll stay
We
here.
will leave you at the podium,
Okay.
and we'll go to 3.02, the audit contract.
So there's a required annual contract, external annual audit contract that we have to do. In the last 2 years, Anderson Smith White has done our audit, and we're satisfied with the audit and the service that we received from them. The price for the contract is going to remain the same. So it's our recommendation that we stay with them and let them perform our audit this year.
Okay, we'll start with Rob. Do you have any comments or questions on the audit contract?
Just to clarify, so it's $30,000 for the audit and $3,000 for the financial statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Shoemaker?
No question.
Mr. Shue? Mr. Harrison? Dr. Phillips? Okay, fantastic.
Thank
I don't have any comments, so we will move along. Before we get to 3.03, we do have a special guest with us tonight. A House member, North Carolina House member Larry Pittman is here, and we certainly appreciate you being here and the work that you do in Raleigh, and welcome to the Ed Center. Okay, 3.03, Read to Achieve Board of Education Resolution. We will welcome to the podium Dr. Jason Van Hukelum and Dr. Tara Natras.
Good evening, board members. Tonight we're going to ask you to vote on a resolution that outlines 2 major objections to the implementation of Read to Achieve under the Excellent Public Schools Act. And while there's certainly space for a conversation on the premise of the legislation, we believe addressing the components of the portfolio in the summer camp are most pressing and need to be documented to demonstrate our position as a district. To be sure, we typically do not submit resolutions on curriculum matters. Resolutions are typically reserved to document the needs between school boards and county commissioners. However, we live in unique times when public education is under the microscope, and subsequent policies at the state and federal level continue to dictate and micromanage local education decisions. By voting yes to this resolution, you will join other districts in the state of North Carolina in documenting our belief that more local school autonomy is needed to produce the high-quality educational programs and experiences that we want for all of our children. As we enter the discussion tonight and outline our position, I want to be very clear that the intention of the Excellent Public Schools Act is admirable, something we fully support. Reading is by far the most important skill a child will learn. Reading can correlate to a child's lifetime earnings and well-being, and therefore must be of utmost importance. In addition, the concept of summer camp is an excellent intervention for kids. It's an intervention that is documented with really strong results in research, and we believe that summer education for kids, and we welcome the financial support to pursue an intervention that has a lot of promise and will do a lot of good for children in Cabarrus County and across the state. However, despite these positive aspects, the implementation of the legislation has produced anxiety within our community as third graders, 9-year-olds, become focused on their reading performance and potentially lose the joy of school. In addition, we as a society might miss the forest for the trees. In an attempt to raise standards and produce a generation of critical thinkers who are creative, collaborative, and communicative, we may just produce a generation of test takers. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Natras to address the board with some anecdotal stories that you've heard as well from emails and such from our community. And in addition, Dr. Natras will highlight some of the major components of the legislation, or of the resolution.
Good evening. So over the last month, we've had lots of meetings with our parents and with our community to talk about the Read to Achieve legislation, particularly because the portfolio went into effect in January. After those meetings, we've gotten a lot of feedback from parents and a lot of feedback from families. I'd like to take a minute and read you an excerpt from one of those emails. Within the first few weeks of third grade, it all changed. We lost our fun-loving, happy, energetic son to a barrage of assessments. He would come home in tears, crying that he was stupid because he couldn't answer the test questions or didn't understand. He had felt smart, smiled, and was excited about school. Now the weekends seem like Christmas each time for him because that means school is done for the week, and Mondays are the equivalent of a root canal for an adult. The excitement is gone, despite my silly and out-of-tune mommy songs I attempt to sing to help get him motivated and excited. We know how important these tests are and that he needs to do well, but we did not know what was at stake surrounding the success or failure on this reading EOG test until now. We've also heard from a lot of families for students who have IEPs. Students already have an individualized education plan. So when you look at the Read to Achieve legislation and having students complete a portfolio and doing the other work that is required, it is difficult to determine how that plan is going to further support their education. That's why they have an IEP. We want to ensure that every student in our county reads at or above grade level throughout their school career, knowing that students progress at different rates and need different types of instruction. In order to achieve this, we have a viable, guaranteed, and coherent curriculum for every student. This curriculum includes a rigorous set of standards as well as a solid assessment plan, and we are confident in this work. This year, state legislation is threatening to veer us from that curriculum, as well as overwhelm our students with assessments because of Read to Achieve. We covered each of the components of Read to Achieve in their entirety at a board meeting several months ago. Tonight we come to you, as Dr. Van Hukelum said, about the portfolio and the summer camp components. So the intent of the portfolio is to provide an additional way for students to demonstrate their proficiency. We want students to be able to demonstrate what they know through a collection of student work selected by the teacher instead of on a one-day reading EOG test. This is one of the reasons we rely on a variety of assessments within our county: Discovery Education, Reading 3D, and classroom formative and summative assessment tools. This information is used to plan guided reading groups, determine student strengths and areas of growth, and provides us with the information needed to support individual students. In addition to these assessments, the portfolio asks students to respond correctly to 4 out of 5 multiple choice questions on 36 separate passages at a minimum. With the addition of these passages, we are in a place where over-assessing may not only take away the meaningfulness of the assessments we currently use, but make it very difficult to instill a love of reading in our students. While it has been argued that these passages are not assessments and prepare students for EOGs, we feel that when considered by a third grade student, that 8 or 9-year-old, it is difficult to see these passages in any other way, particularly with the importance placed on the results. Reading experiences for students should be authentic and measured in authentic ways. The implementation of the portfolio as defined will exacerbate the idea that reading is about answering multiple choice questions and not about synthesizing new ideas, defending thinking, and understanding an author's purpose, to name a few of the skills and strategies in which readers engage. Furthermore, students already behind in reading need more reading time at their diagnosed level and with prescribed strategies. Because the portfolio process is one of the good cause exemptions, parents will expect that we will have offered this option if their child has not passed the EOG. Even though it has been explained that districts are not required to offer the portfolio to every student, parents will expect districts to implement these. We have implemented a plan that includes parents in the decision regarding the implementation of the portfolio, but feel it is in the best interest of our students that it is not an option. So Dr. Van Hoekelum is going to speak to you now about summer camp, which is the other component of our resolution, and share some final thoughts.
Second component we'd like to address is summer camp. As I mentioned earlier, summer camp is a solid intervention for students who need additional support in reading. Adding instructional time and resources and intensive supports will positively impact those students who are reading below grade level. It's imperative that the instructional time, resources, and supports are of high quality and address the specific needs of the students. Therefore, we developed a program that will engage students with low staff-to-student ratios. Students will be supported with intensive interventions, work that is online and with technology tools that can also be used at home, and engage in balanced literacy activities geared specifically to their reading needs. However, creating a high-quality program with limited resources provided by the state will be impossible to accomplish without additional local funds. Therefore, this is a partially funded mandate, as only $358,000 of the $673,000 that's needed to fund the high-quality program will be funded by the state. This leaves an additional $315,000 to be funded at the local level when local school districts are already underfunded. Therefore, we're requesting 72 hours that they be met through a 4-week program instead of a 6-week program. To further support a 4-week program, we have concerns about student engagement for the entirety of 6 weeks in an 8-week summer. As you know, our summer is already 8 weeks, and we're afraid of student burnout on school and no time for kids to be kids, as you and I were when we had our summers. By moving to a 4-week program instead of a 6-week program, we hope to increase attendance of our students that qualify and also decrease the cost of the summer camp. So we're requesting that we have permission to do a 4-week camp instead of a 6-week camp that is required by law. In closing, again, I want to reiterate strongly that we agree with many of the components and the underlying assumptions of the Read to Achieve legislation. But by voting yes tonight, you're going to give us an opportunity to document that we would like more autonomy in the implementation of the Read to Achieve legislation. And at this time, we'll take any questions that you may have.
Okay, great. Thank you both for your presentation, and we will start our discussion and any questions with Dr. Phillips.
Okay, thank you. I have a lot to say. If I get too long, just have David turn my mic off.
Not my job. Not my job.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and as I was thinking about it, what is my duty as a school board member on this particular mandate? And I thought back to the very first action that the 4 new school board members had in our first meeting in December of 2012. And that action was to sign a code of ethics for school board members. And it says, as a member of my local school board, I will strive to improve public education, and to that end I will. And then there's about 20 bullet points of things that I will do. And the very last one is, remember always that my first and greatest concern will be the educational welfare of the students attending the public schools. Now, the two things that we are asking for from DPI are to counteract things that go against the educational welfare of the students attending our schools. And in my opinion, just asking them for that waiver, it does not go far enough. We will do what this says, and if the state doesn't like it, they can take us to court. And at that court, I'm going to play that I'm an attorney, even though I'm an engineer, and since there have been some attorneys playing like they're engineers here lately, I don't see that that's, I think that's fair. If I was our board attorney, I would call Representative Pittman to the stand, and I would ask him, is this really what you intended? And he would say, of course this is not what we intended. We didn't want kids to take 36 multiple choice exams in order to prove that they're proficient at reading. And then I would let a jury of our peers decide which body is correctly implementing the will of this law. Is it the Cabarrus County School Board, or is it the Department of Public Instruction? I feel confident we would win that case. So that's my first point. The second point is that when I ran, I said that I would do three things, and one of them was push back against unfunded mandates from Raleigh and Washington, D.C. You just said that we're going to get $358,000 out of what's going to cost us $673,000. How much will the cost be if we go to only 4 weeks?
We'll probably save in transportation. We'll still have to meet the 72-hour requirement, so the cost of teachers will be the same. But we could guess that we'd probably save $100,000.
$100,000. So we are still going to be out well over $200,000 on this, and so I think that we need to. That something needs to be done there to say that if they really want us to carry out these summer programs, summer camps, then they need to be fully funded. And if not, we'll go the number of weeks that we can go, the number of hours that we can go with the money that they have given us. And at that point, we will have said we did our best with the money you gave us. And again, if you don't like it, take us to court. And then we'll see how that one turns out as well. Now, the one concern I have is with the resolution, besides the fact that it doesn't say we're doing, I know you can't tell them we're going to do this whether you like it or not. We have to ask permission, but frankly, it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. We just say we're not going to implement the reading portfolio. What I would like us to say is that in its place, we will do this. And whatever that is. Now, I don't know if it's using Reading 3D, whatever the options. I think I saw somewhere that you've already sent a note to DPI saying we'd like to use these instead. I would like to see that in the resolution that says instead of the reading assessments, we're going to use this as the alternative to the EOGs. Because I think some parents read this and get a little worried that it's like, you mean then it's all going to be on the EOG and you don't have any alternative for my child? And it's like, that better not be what we're doing, or I will not be a happy school board member.
So one of the things we are doing is submitting a letter to the State Board of Education that goes at this month's meeting, which is this week, to address that very issue. So we are asking that Discovery Education and the TRC, the text and reading comprehension component of Reading 3D, be used in place of the portfolio and in conjunction with EOGs and the Read to Achieve test to determine student proficiency. So if that gets passed at the State Board meeting this week, then we will have that in place. So that's our hope.
Well, again, I think we should just announce to our parents that this is what we're doing, period. And then I will also vote for the resolution.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Mr. Harrison, do you have comments?
Help me out. We've got roughly 30,000 students. Roughly how many third graders do we have? Give or take.
2,500.
307.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
2,307.
2,307 children going through this very stressful process. Okay. 2,307, right? Approximately how many phone calls, emails, comments, without duplication, have we received from 2,600 parents? I'm sorry, 4,600 parents.
So that's going to be difficult to quantify
Sure,
because
but how many,
here's
give or take, I know you got to be anecdotally here, but how much feedback, comment, parental opinion have we received on this topic?
Sure. So here's what I can say. Over the course of the month of January, we have had parent meetings with all of the third grade parents within the community. So schools had those meetings. A lot of the parent questions and things were addressed at those meetings. So some of the parents who would have otherwise emailed or called had their questions asked there. Then I received a collection of those questions from principals and things who were holding those meetings. I'm looking at Hilda Batts, one of our elementary principals, and responded to the principals to in turn respond to parents. So I don't know how many parents have also communicated with principals. I do know that I have fielded after it's gone through those channels, and our teachers, our third grade teachers this year are amazing. Our third grade teachers over the course of the last month have held about 1,100 or so parent conferences with parents for students who may have to attend summer camp. So they've done an outstanding job of that. So parents have
I'm
had
sorry, that number was 1,100?
about 1,100 across the county.
So approximately half of the 2,300. So we expect a 50%. Not expect, but there are concerns if we cannot remediate up to that point that the population this summer would be in that range.
I would say that that number is inflated a bit because we were having these parent conferences with families of students who may be eligible for the portfolio, and we're trying to make sure that any student who both is reading below grade level and maybe just on grade level receives an opportunity to do the portfolio. So that's why that number is a little bit higher than what we anticipate. We're thinking probably 30 to 40% as we look down the road for
of
summer
the
camp stuff.
2,300.
Yes.
Okay.
So to answer your question, I don't know how many parents, because they've had those meetings, they've had parent conferences with teachers individually, but I have over the course of probably the last 3 weeks, so it's gone through those channels and come to me probably about 30 to 35 emails or phone calls or various other communications regarding the legislation.
I'm just picking a number, and don't let me be too high or too low, but I'm assuming about 900 parents, 900 children might be in this summer reading program, as best as you might anticipate it at this point. I know that's crystal ball stuff. I understand that. So my child can't read, and my child needs to go to summer school. And according to this letter, we'd like to do it in 4 weeks, over 72 hours. So I would get my child to that school at what time in the morning, and then pick my child up at what time according to that. I mean, let's think in terms, we're all parents, or many of us are parents here. What would the parent and their schedule have to be to do, and how flexible would the parent's life have to be to accommodate this program, in effect mandated by state law, as it stands right this moment? What hours would this summer school impose upon a parent's schedule?
And Dr. Nash is going to give you that schedule, but I do want to clarify. Let's not forget we raise standards, right? So by raising standards, we raise the cut score, as Dr. Phillips likes to remind us about, that we've raised the cut score by where you pass the EOG. So I'm always careful not to use the word can't read, because in my opinion, many of these children can read. It's just a definition of what we have now determined as proficient.
My child cannot read adequately.
Is that like a one or new higher standard?
Is that a one or according to the higher standards? But my child is having difficulty. That my child.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what hours of the day would this program exist for 4 weeks?
So the way it exists right now is a 6-week proposal because the legislation had said 6 to 8 weeks, and we were looking at a student day from 8 o'clock until 12:15. If we condense it to 4 weeks, we're looking at about a 4.5-hour day, so students would go until about 1:45-ish. So from about 8 until 2.
So I would have to
be
pick
the
my
day.
child up at lunch 5 days a week for these 4 weeks.
Well, it will be 4 days per week.
4 days a week for these
Yes.
4 weeks.
And we will provide transportation, and we are also working with Kids Plus to have options
So
for after
good,
school.
that was one of my questions.
Yep.
You are coordinating with Kids Plus
Yes.
to blend those children into
Yes.
those programs.
Yes, we are.
Well, then that brings up the question, does Kids Plus have the capacity? I know that's a different matter, but that will be hashed out in time. Okay, I'm good on all of that, and I appreciate those clarifications. And this might sound like something trivial, but should this letter be converted into an actual resolution? The reason I ask is because does a resolution for these purposes have a greater legal weight to it than as it's presented here, or is that not material and doesn't necessarily matter? For the purposes of what we're trying to achieve here, is this format sufficient, or should it be a formal resolution? And that doesn't necessarily have to be answered now, but I'm just...
Might as well answer it now if there's an answer to that question.
Certainly, I think there is no strong legal precedent for whether a letter or a resolution is more appropriate in this. If it's the pleasure of the board and if you all would feel that it's a more forceful statement to have it come as a resolution from the board, we certainly can reformat it that way.
My only thought on that is a resolution typically is only signed by the board chair. The letter here is going to be signed by both the board chair and the superintendent. And to me, that probably holds a little more weight. That's just my opinion.
I think it's a matter of formatting, and however you all feel comfortable presenting it, either way would be proper.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Shue, we welcome your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, this is a controversial issue because, a lot of the parents, particularly the third grade parents, and teachers, of course, as well, have great concern about the impact that this particular legislation has on their children. And I would assume this would be an ongoing thing until they decide not to do it. But as I look at this particular legislation from the state, it's just, in my opinion, it's just another example of elected officials overstepping their boundaries and telling us what we need for our children in Cabarrus County when we're already doing a lot of the things that we can do. We're doing already, such as the SPLASH program at FUR to help children get on grade level. And but to make a long story short, I think that it's good, Jason, that you and Tara have listened to the people that this impacts. And my only desire is that the state will listen to us as a board. That what we want for our children is what we think is best for our children, and we want to do all that we can on our end. And I want to compliment Dr. Phillips on his comments, because I could say, Jeff, you really did your homework on this, and I'm right there with you on those comments. And, I think if they're going to provide us with another, this is one of many over the years unfunded mandates that, there's got to be a stopping point somewhere, and where that, we'll do what we can with what you give us. And when that runs out, well, you send us some more and we'll keep going. But until then, though, that's all that we're going to do. And then another thing, too, and I did want to mention this because I did get quite a few emails. And, one of our visionary statements is that we want to teach the whole child. But now, just remember, just because we want to teach the whole child, that don't mean all the time. So the parents have to be involved somewhere along this line. I say this, I remember when I was in elementary at the old A.T. Allen School many years ago, that I actually went to a summer camp on my own one time because I knew that I needed help, and it really was one of the best things that I'd done, but it wasn't but just for 2 weeks. But I remember it, of all the many things of my elementary days, that's one thing that stood out in my mind because I did that on my own, and it helped me to learn to be a better reader, to be able to better comprehend what I was reading. But I think, though, keeping the local control, the teachers, that they know what they're doing, they do their assessments, and they know. But then again, assessments is a vital point, so you have to catch it early. But I'm with you on this, and I think we need to do this plus more if we can. Thank you both for all the hard work you did on this.
Thank you, Mr. Shue. Mr. Shoemaker.
Well, Tara and Jason, I'm glad you were listening and heard the cries from afar and from locally. The thing about this legislation, when we were presented it, especially at the detail that we went into in our retreat, you know, it was full of all these prescriptions, and they were very, very tight. And when I started getting the letters, I started getting letters from people that, when you were giving me the prescriptions that we were supposed to use to remedy a child who couldn't read in third grade, didn't address children that had a special need issue or had a special situation. And there are children out there that may never get to read to third grade, and this legislation is really penalizes those children. And there are children in high school right now that will never get beyond a third grade proficiency, but we prepare them for the world in the best way we can and keep moving them forward rather than stigmatizing them and moving and keeping them where they are. I didn't see anything in here for the children with the IEP. I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but I don't see anything in your remedy here that you're going to float up to the state that really addresses the IEP. Did you have some plans in there to add in something like that?
So that was a challenge, and we certainly heard from several families that have children with disabilities. I think you did as well. We didn't want to include that in our resolution because for many of those children, summer camp will be a great activity for them. So we really want to handle those on an individual basis and make those decisions through local, just kind of exempting them if it's the right decision for that particular child. By putting it in a resolution formally, you know, there's a lot of students with disabilities that are going to benefit from summer camp and need to be there. We want them there, and they should be there, but we want to handle that on an individual basis. So that was kind of our rationale behind that. And Tara, I don't know if you want to. Yeah.
The mandatory nature of the summer camp is also troubling for a lot of our parents. The mandatory nature of it,
right?
Because I mean, even with the remedy that you've proposed, there's still a mandatory piece associated with it, which is creating a lot of angst amongst our families.
Sure.
Because in summertime, you know, they're even struggling even harder to figure out how to accommodate the will of the system and what it's imposing upon them. Is the summer school a tool that they can use in a voluntary way, or is it going to be a mandatory requirement that these children go to this summer school? Because I mean, I can understand. I mean, I had my summers off. Now I did do things. My parents loved me very much and got me involved in things, but we didn't go to school for 4 weeks during a summer, and I just wonder if we're not penalizing the children just a little bit too much with a standard like this. Now, I'm not accusing you of, but with this legislation, it seems, and with the way it's been interpreted, because there's two parts to the legislation. One is the legislation, and then the other part is the way the Department of Public Instruction has interpreted it, and I guess put together their interpretation of how it works. Is that true?
That is true, and so a couple things I want to back up a little bit. So that your points are exactly one of the reasons why we wanted to decrease from 6 to 4 weeks. So if you think of an 8-week summer, you get out of school, and you guys remember when you get out of school, that last day of school, you're ready to hit the playground or whatever. So we were going to give the kids 1 week after school got out, and then right back at it, go all the way through till the first week of August. So that's what we would have to do if we don't get this exemption. So we are asking for it to go back to 4 weeks. To your point about whether it's voluntary or mandatory, the law does say it's mandatory. If you don't come to summer school, you are required to be retained physically in third grade. Okay, so if you're a child and you don't pass all these tests and you're deemed not proficient and you don't come to summer school, you say, thanks but no thanks, then you will be retained physically in 3rd grade. Remember, if you go to summer school and still don't pass, then you'll be promoted to 4th grade physically, but with a retention label. So you see the slight nuance there. However, the law doesn't give an attendance requirement as far as 95%, do I have to be there 72% of the time? That is a local decision. And so we have yet to make those guidelines for school. Certainly, if we're going to offer summer school to kids that need reading help, we want them there as much as possible. And so that's something that we're going to make a decision on as with our principals as we kind of seek to implement the summer camp component. But the law doesn't say a percentage of time, it just says they have to go to summer school. It's going to be challenging because you're going to have vacations, you're going to have traditions of families. We go to the beach every second week of July, or whatever. And also you have kids that want to participate in other camps. A lot of the sports camps, all kinds of different things that they're trying to sign up for now has caused a lot of anxiety in the community as well.
So I do want to read, because this is directly out of the statute and how it references summer camp, just so we know what is required and why we're looking at this letter or resolution, wherever we end up with that. It does say summer camps shall be 6 to 8 weeks long, 4 or 5 days per week, include at least 3 hours of instructional time per day. So that's actually in the statute. That's not a Department of Public Instruction interpretation. So I think that's an important thing to note. So as we're writing this letter and asking for this, that it is part of that statute.
All right, my final point is perhaps we don't go far enough. Perhaps our letter really needs to include, let's get a 1-year waiver because we just went through all this testing. And now what you've got is children that are not prepared at the level that, because of the way the testing you did, say, we raised the standards. And now we're asking them it would be like swimming in a pool, and I want you to swim 25 yards in 15 seconds, even though last year you had to do it in 20 seconds. And that's a major increase in proficiency in being able to swim. The same thing goes here with this. We've increased the amount of proficiency that we require out of our children. We've raised the bar extremely high, and here we've penalized this group of 3rd graders with no opportunity to give give them a year of advanced training or advanced notice that this is coming. Also, many parents have already put down monies on vacation places. Usually you have to go out 9 months to a year. So now if they fall into this, I don't know if this is going to be a reason that a company would give them back their money just because their child has to go to summer school. We're in new waters. But I really feel like we need to look at this. And I think as a board, most of us would probably go, let's push back a little bit and say, look, you wanted this implementation. We're not against it. We're all for children reading and being proficient and being really good, if they can be. But we don't want to penalize the ones that are struggling because they literally don't have the tools in the toolbox that they need to do what they need to do. And we don't want to take this group of 3rd graders and create next year's 3rd grade bubble that looks like it's 25% higher, and we've created this artificial bubble through our system that has to take care of, which is going to affect our ratios for children in the classroom and those types of things. So I think we're setting up ourselves for another type of failure later on, and we haven't really looked at it. What is the whole cause and effect? And I'm not saying that the legislation's bad, but I think we need to look at common sense. How do we implement the legislation rather than just pulling a rabbit out of the hat and making it happen all in 1 year? Phase-in approach. 1 year, one more year of forgiveness on this, and then some of the remedies that we're prescribing now gives parents an opportunity to be prepared before their child goes into 3rd grade, because they'll know in 2nd grade where they are. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Mr. Walter.
Mr. Shoemaker makes some very good points on that as well. Several things are going through my mind on it as well. Just the numbers. I mean, we're looking, we offer summer school now, do we not, for some students?
Some of our Title I schools do offer some summer programs for students.
So some students, and that's, how are they selected?
It's a school-based decision
Based-
because they use their Title
But
I
it's not
funds
every-
as
it's
part
not
of their
every school.
school-wide.
Okay.
No.
I don't like the mandatory aspect of things. I mean, we're talking 1,000 students possibly being required to go to summer school, and that puts a big burden on us, like you were saying. Where did you come up with the $600,000 to run a summer school?
That includes transportation, includes the site administrator, includes all the teachers, includes...
At every school, or are we?
No, we're doing 4 sites. We
Four
do 4 sites, about 200, 250 per site. A.T. Allen, Wolf Meadow, Weddington, and Royal Oaks.
So we've already shared that with the parents?
Not with parents yet, but I guess I just did. It's where we're going, yeah. So they would be, you're going to be bused to a site. We're not going to have summer school at every site. So we're
And the
trying to
dates,
minimize
the dates
cost.
for that now that you're asking for, if you got the 4 weeks, would be what?
We haven't selected the dates for the 4 weeks yet because we wanted to bring the resolution to you first. We do have a calendar, as Dr. Van Hukelum talked about right now, for 6 weeks that would start on June 23rd and run through August 8th with a vacation week, 4th of July week. And that would be the 6-week program.
And that's complying with the state requirement as it is now?
Yes.
Are there other things that we could, I see it very difficult for 1,000 families here to mandatorily, they're going to summer school.
Yeah, so one of the, to Mr. Shoemaker's point as well, we haven't set the bar for what does attendance look like at summer school. What is a reasonable expectation? So let's say your child does have to go to summer school, does not meet the standards, and we have a 4-week camp or we have a 6-week camp. We know you may or may not go on vacation. Some reasonable things that families do in the summer that we don't want to necessarily deprive them of. We haven't come to that magic number yet. That's definitely, but that would be the way to address the need that families have to have a more flexible environment.
Is there a way they can get credit for doing stuff at home, via online or something, or it has to be physically in a school?
About tutoring. Okay.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you. Is that by statute? I mean, does it say that there's no online, there's no other way but physically be in the building?
It doesn't say anything specifically about online instruction. What it does say is what I read to you earlier about summer reading camp means an additional educational program outside of the instructional calendar provided by, here's the piece around tutoring, the local school administrative unit to any student who does not demonstrate reading proficiency. And that is how the statute reads.
Sorry, Mr. Walter,
No,
that just piqued my interest there. Go right ahead.
But the state is basically saying if you're not scoring a 1 or a 2 on an EOG, is that correct? If you score a 1 or a 2,
Right.
you're not proficient. Where the grades aren't taking into account at this at all? How they've gone over the course of the year? None
So
of that?
that's what we're looking at, and that's what we're hoping the State Board of Education is going to approve this week. We want to be able to use multiple measures to determine the proficiency and make that decision. We do believe if children are struggling in reading, we know that more intensive time in intensive instruction will support their needs. So having after-school programs, having summer programs, those are good things. I think the thing in this legislation that is causing an issue is the mandatory side, but I don't want us to feel like it's a penalty to go to summer school, right? We want our children to have extra time in instruction and extra time if they need that. So the big piece of this is what are the measures we use to determine that. So if we can use multiple measures instead of being limited to EOGs or the Read to Achieve assessment, then I think we can make sure that we are selecting students for summer camp who truly will benefit from summer camp. And we're working really diligently to make sure that it is a high quality program. And we will work with families, as Dr. Van Hukelum has said, about attendance and some of those pieces. But I want us to know that that is a good thing for some of our students.
Okay. I mean, I've gotten a lot of emails and comments as well, and I've got a lot of concerns. I mean, labeling children, that's troubling to me. There's the testing that we're doing. If you do the math that you've come up with, that's 18 hours of testing at least. That's insane. It's got to take away from what we're spending in the classroom. How, you're spending all the time testing. How are you helping the kids? Let's see. And I do think we ought to have a resolution that should be stated, and I think we all should be signing it if we're all willing to do that. It doesn't need to just be the board or the board chairs. And I'm supportive of Mr. Shoemaker's suggestion of a year delay as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. I'm going to put somebody on the spot, and she doesn't know this, but we have a former regional principal of the year sitting here who's an elementary school principal. You are welcome to decline comment, but from a perspective of a elementary school principal who's having to deal with this, I would welcome your comments if you would so choose to comment. And please welcome Ms. Hilda Batts.
I think that all of the comments, I think you have gotten it. And I appreciate the thought that you put into it and the thought that these two people have put into this. We have had lots of comments from parents, and they've been good questions. It does concern me that we're being asked to fund something that we know could be good quality, but it's not funded fully. But the issue of portfolios with children, and in the process, these children are actually going to get less instruction, direct instruction from a teacher, because that teacher is spending her time or his time continuing to assess. We assess lots of ways and many times throughout the year. We know how children are performing. We don't need a portfolio that tells us, nope, you don't have it yet. The next week, nope, you don't have it yet. Nope, you don't have it yet. I can't imagine any child or any parent or any teacher or any educator or any board member, anyone who would find that actually is the way that we should go. So as I say, I think you have it. I think you've gotten it.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We
Thank
certainly
you.
do appreciate your comments, and I believe Dr. Shepard wanted to make some comments.
I just wanted to say that how pleased I am with the work of our curriculum department to pursue trying to take what we considered and what we knew last summer was bad legislation, and as Mr. Shue said, the intrusion of state government into a local matter, and try to turn something and make something positive of this. And I know it's difficult for the parents that are here to understand what's determined at the state level and what's determined by the State Board of Education then, or let me start with what's determined by the General Assembly, then by the State Board of Education, and then by the local Board of Education. But what's happening tonight, I think, is a great showing of what we can do when we want to join together to try to impact decisions that affect us locally. Now, I want to get a little ahead of us here for just a minute if I can and say this kind of focus is what we need, not in February, but in the prior summer, when we can really make a difference, when we can let our folks in Raleigh know that we have a local Board of Education that can decide whether a child needs to be promoted to the next grade. We know we have enough testing, too much testing already in education. Why would we want to do more? And so I want to encourage those that are here and those that are listening that when we send out emails to say contact your legislatures, and not just those that represent this area, but those that are making decisions all across the state that might not represent our particular area, but might be the head of a certain committee or be in such a powerful position, to get involved in. I'm holding a memo from our state budget director, Mr. Art Pope, that was sent out to Philip Price, who is the head of the Department of Public Instruction Finance Department. And it says in this memo that in preparation for next year Governor McCrory's budget, that he's asking that they look at reductions at a minimum of 2% for next year in education. Yet we're hearing right now that there are raises promised for teachers, yet the first direction that comes out of Raleigh to DPI is look how you can make cuts. And I think we have to join together and realize that this kind of action is the creeping into public education from people who really want you to believe they value it, but really don't. And I think we have seen so many things happen within the last year that's tearing down public education. One example tonight will be the 25% contract that we're going to make great lemonade out of a very, very sour lemon. We're going to talk about that later, but this is just one example tonight of how you're doing exactly what we need you to do, and that's take your area and make it what's in the best interest of children, regardless of what the powers above you have you do. I don't get passionate about stuff often. I leave the passion to Jeff. He's Mr. Passion down there. But I can tell you, we will join together, we will make a difference, and we will influence the people that are putting this oppression on us and our children. And thank you for your leadership. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard. I'm going to make a couple just minor comments. There's not much to add to what we've had, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to proceed. But Mr. Harrison, did you have a further comment? Okay. I guess the one thing that I would like to say is the piece that sticks in my craws a little bit is the unfunded mandate. And for a long, long time, my political philosophy from that happening at Washington back to the states has always been that until the states understand the 10th Amendment, it's going to keep happening. That's the only defense against it. Well, I don't know what the equivalent of the 10th Amendment is for a local school board to the capital, the state capital, but until we push back a little bit, it's just going to keep happening. And that's where we have to step in and decide that we at the local level know more about what we're doing. And quite frankly, we have that battle is going to just keep going. So the local flexibility piece is consistent with what I've thought about our role since I got here, and that's that we know better what to do than somebody in Raleigh or certainly somebody in Washington. So I don't think there's any real need to go further with that. What we need to do is decide. I think what we'll do, my intention is to put it on the action agenda. I think Carolyn probably will want to comment. Reading is one of her pet issues, and I'd like to give her the chance to comment on it. So I'd like to put it on the action agenda. But we've got we have a suggestion by Dr. Phillips of putting in the resolution not only what we have, but what we are proposing that we are going to do. And we have a suggestion by Mr. Shoemaker to ask for a delay of a year for implementation. 1 year deferment. So we as a board need to have a quick discussion, or I guess we will have that discussion next week. Or go ahead, Dr. Van Hugelen.
Before you have your discussion, I do want to make one point to Barry Shoemaker's suggestion of the delay. If we do include that, I mean, we've been asking for money to do summer school for a long time because we believe summer school is a good thing to do. And if they had just given us money and said, here's some money to do summer school, we would be all over it. So whatever, I don't want to lose the $300,000 we do have to do what's right for kids. So let's be careful in how we word that if you choose to go in that direction. That'd be my only suggestion.
But if we were to be given money to do summer school, we would not perhaps make it mandatory for students, or you would be retained. I think that's the part that,
absolutely,
that
yes,
gripes me about that mandate coming in rather than you decide.
So maybe the resolution really needs to be about the flexibility with how we assign summer school and the attendance quality.
Okay. Now, I would be fine with that. Does that kind of meet what your intention was?
My intention is we just raised the bar. We've got third graders. We've got third graders that found out this year that they're under all this pressure. They didn't find out in second grade. Mom and Dad didn't have a time to find out in second grade. They just got it hurled upon them. And of course, it took a while for us to get the details ironed out because we were, working all summer to try to get that done and then get the information out to the parents. And, we heard about it at our board retreat in January, and I think you gave us a heads up back in November that it was coming, but you still hadn't worked all the details, and you were still trying to get that.
And we didn't have them until December. So,
okay,
yeah.
Well then, yeah. So you can see how good my memory is. Maybe I need to be in that class. But I just think I'm not against it. I want children to be able to read, and I want us to make sure we have the bar up there, but at the same time, you just don't want to just force it down their throat right on the first coming out. I don't want to see this big bubble coming through third grade, fourth grade, and we got 500, 600 additional students in that one group that keeps going all the way through the schools, which means that group will always have a higher teacher-student ratio, and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, we literally have created an abnormal situation, and, you know, one of the things we're trying to do is fight to get a better teacher-student ratio, and now we're going to be forced into something that's not as, what I would call, as good as we would like it, you know, because we are already higher than the rest of the state when it comes to student-teacher ratio anyway. So,
Okay, well,
I don't know what the happy medium is.
Mr. Shue, you look like you've got a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of comment on Mr. Shoemaker's comments there. This is one of the situations that I see. I'm like you, Jason. I don't want to lose. I mean, we have a hard enough time getting money as it is for everything that we try to do for children, and I don't want to see us to lose the money. But now, this is just me, and there's the rest of these guys have got to decide what they feel. But there's a lot of merit to what Barry's saying. You know, I mean, penalizing children that they thought they were on grade level. We raised the bar, and all of a sudden, guess what, Mom? I'm not at third grade level anymore. I'm at second grade level. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to go to summer school and all of that. So just to make a long story short, I think that we do need to ask for the 1-year deferment. And as far as the money's concerned, you know, hey, take your money. We want to do it the way we want to do it this term, and then we'll take your money next year. We'll do it our way this year.
Okay, is that clear as mud, what we're asking for?
Yes, we're going to, we'll draft some language for you guys
Okay.
to look at.
And we'll put it on the action agenda.
And
We'll be able to read it this week and
Yeah.
make comments
Yeah.
next week when we come. And I believe there's another comment from Dr. Phillips.
Well, I just want to make a couple more observations for our viewing audience, especially. We said, several of you have mentioned the higher standard. Let me put this in exact terms. If your child got 76% of the answers correct on the reading exam, they are not proficient according to the state DPI. If they got 77%, they passed. If they got 76%, you're going to summer camp. That's what we're talking about. And oh, by the way, this year, our state legislature told us they would no longer fund teacher assistants for third grade. So that means that the third grade teachers no longer have as much time to give individual attention to the exact students who need it most. Now, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would think we were being set up for failure.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. One last question. I know that Rowan has either passed or is going to pass a resolution, and Kannapolis City Schools, the same thing. Can you give us an indication of any of the other districts that you know of? And you may not know of any of them, but are there any that you know of?
Those are the only two that I'm aware of right now. There are others who have written letters to the State Board of Education for the state board meeting this week, Union and CMS, and the Piedmont, I don't know what that's actually called, the Piedmont Consortium, that's a little bit further north, that's about 16 school districts or so, has also submitted a letter to the state board that will go this week with ours. So there are other districts going that avenue as well.
Okay, I may try to read some of at least the Kannapolis and Rowan this week if they're out there, but do you know, just off the top of your head, are they asking sort of basically what we're asking for, or is it somewhat different in their approach?
Rowan asked for a reprieve from the portfolio because of the passages and some of the same concerns that we have voiced tonight. Kannapolis looks very similar to ours. They're looking at the portfolio, and they've also requested a 4-week summer camp that meets the 72-hour requirement as opposed to 6.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, yes, Mr. Harrison.
maybe I use this example too often. Maybe I wear it on the sleeve too much. I read from right to left. Okay? And a program of this nature at the right time may have made some things a little bit not easier, but would have given me some means of dealing with or adjusting to that reality sooner. So at the end of the day, which is not a phrase I like, at the end of the day, there is a certain number of our students, children here in Cabarrus County who need to read better. Whatever scores or other things we talk about. And so I hope that our resolution will lay out in specific details alternatives that we are proposing, and not in some cursory way, but in enough detail to explicitly state to the legislators as well as DPI and other parties involved what Cabarrus plans to do to make it better for those children who need those interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Board members, we're going to move on to 3.04, and we're going to invite Ms. Kathy Auger to the podium and talk about our four-year teacher contract process.
Good evening. This evening, I'd like to take a moment before the contract discussion to thank you, our Board of Education, for the support of teachers. As a board, you've advocated with both the state and local government for the needs of students and teachers, including salary increases. Recently, you stepped out at a non-customary time of the year to request a pay increase from our county commissioners. For that, I thank you, and on behalf of the staff, I also want to thank our county commissioners for acknowledging this request by providing teachers and other employees with a 1% salary increase. As you're aware, salaries have been substantially frozen since 2008 by the state, and these acts by both boards were a tangible way to demonstrate support. So I wanted to take a moment. I hope that was okay. This evening, for the teacher contract discussion, I'd like to present a brief overview of the legislation in a few sentences, and then share with the board our presentation that we're making to the teachers of our proposed plan. I'd also like to welcome some of the members of the Teacher Contract Committee who are here with us tonight, some of those behind me on either side. Senate Bill 402 provides funding for 25% of teachers and licensed support staff with 3 years of consecutive service in Cabarrus County Schools to be offered a 4-year contract. The contract includes an annual increase of $500 in addition to any other legislated increases for each of the 4 years beginning 2014-15. While there are differing opinions about aspects of the law, including our belief that all CCS teachers deserve a reasonable rate of pay, we want to be sure the proposed criteria represent our best work. A CCS committee has developed a proposed rubric over the past 2 months, which we'll now share with you this evening. Welcome to this presentation on implementation of Senate Bill 402, the new teacher contract law. I'm Kathy Auger, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. With me today are 3 members of the Cabarrus County Schools Teacher Contract Rubric Committee who will be sharing information. They are Courtney Smith, a teacher at C.C. Griffin Middle School and our District Teacher of the Year, Patty Norris, a teacher at Central Cabarrus High School and a member of the Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council, and Nick Nostros, a teacher at Pitt School Road Elementary and CEA president. During this presentation, you will learn about the background of the law, composition of the committee, which has worked collaboratively to bring forward a recommendation, details of the process, and a proposed timeline.
We believe the growth in student achievement we are experiencing in Cabarrus County Schools is due to the dedicated and high-quality teachers in our district. We support increased compensation for all teachers and licensed support staff. In regard to the new teacher contract law, we believe it is important for teachers to be well informed in our district. While there may be differing perspectives about the new teacher contract law, we want to be sure the decisions made by the district related to this law represent our best thoughts. Senate Bill 402 provides funding for 25% of teachers and licensed support staff with 3 years of consecutive service in Cabarrus County Schools to be offered a 4-year contract. The contract includes an annual increase of $500 in addition to any other legislated increases for each of the 4 years beginning 2014-2015. Licensed teacher-level employees with 3 years of consecutive full-time credited service as of September 1st, 2013 and proficient performance on all standards of the 2012-2013 evaluation can be considered. Senate Bill 402 states that the 4-year contract, if offered and accepted, would be in lieu of career status, commonly called tenure if it is held. This chart displays the 3 possibilities for contract status in North Carolina for the next 4 years. In the first group, 25% of teachers with 3 or more years of consecutive Cabarrus County Schools service will be offered a 4-year contract. If accepted, the contract will be effective for the 2014-15 year through 2017-18. In the next group, teachers with career status who are not offered or do not choose to accept a 4-year contract will continue with career status through 2017-18. A component of Senate Bill 402 is the end of career status for all teachers following the 2017-18 school year. The removal of career status is currently being challenged in the courts. In the third illustration, a teacher who does not hold a 4-year contract and has not achieved tenure will be eligible for annual contract renewal. This chart illustrates the financial impact of being offered and accepting a 4-year contract. Beginning 2014-15, $500 would be added to the base salary each year for 4 years. The value of the increase is $5,000 cumulatively over 4 years. The legislation does not specify if the increase would continue in the subsequent contracts. Each superintendent is charged with identifying 25% of the teachers having 3 consecutive years of creditable teacher-level experience in that county and proficient performance on their summative evaluation to be offered a 4-year contract. In our district, input is important. A committee comprised of certified staff, school administrators, central office, a board member, and the board attorney met over 3 months to systematically and thoughtfully prepare recommendations on these parameters for the superintendent to present to the Board of Education. The board will consider these recommendations at their February meeting. If approved, teachers and licensed support staff will complete a survey to indicate whether or not they would like to be considered. If interested, teachers and licensed staff will submit additional information which will allow them to be considered.
The Teacher Contract Committee members were Courtney Smith, Middle School Teacher and CCS Teacher of the Year, Nick Nostros, Elementary Teacher, CEA President and NCAE District President, Patty Norris, High School Teacher and Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council Member, Jeff Phillips, Board Member, Barry Shepard, Superintendent, Keisha Kahn, Middle School Principal, 2013-14 Principal of the Year, Lynn Reimer, High School Principal, 2012-2013 Principal of the Year and State High School Principal of the Year, and Hilda Batts, Elementary Principal, 2011-2012 Principal of the Year and State Regional Principal of the Year. Mark Enriquez, Board Attorney, participated on our committee. Serving from Central Office were Jason Van Uculum, Deputy Superintendent, Tara Natras, Curriculum and Instruction Director, Cheryl Milam, Curriculum and Instruction Director, Donna Smith, Executive Director, Student Services, Kathy Auger, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and Miriam Bish, Executive Director, Human Resources. The committee felt we have built strong collaboration and cooperation among teachers and administrative staff, which is now an embedded part of our tradition. Therefore, the committee sought to develop a plan that protected our collaborative spirit. The team strived to create a result that supports and impacts student success, is fair and does not create rifts on our staffs, is viewed as a win-win, is seen as a reward, honors people who go above and beyond, and has clearly defined processes and criteria. The objectives led the committee to develop a hybrid approach, one that considered quantitative criteria, but also recognized aspects of service and leadership that contribute to one's full impact as a teacher. How will the plan work? Each individual school will receive a prorated percentage of the 360 4-year contracts based on the staff members eligible for consideration in their school. Guidance counselors, tech facilitators, and media coordinators will participate with their schools. Speech pathologists, psychologists, social workers, and central office staff paid on the state teacher schedule will form another group. Pre-K teachers not at Wall will form a group with Long School. A variety of plan categories will allow teachers to demonstrate their unique contributions. Using a survey link, staff will have the ability to indicate whether they are eligible and interested. If interested, the staff member provides the additional information. We support a teacher's personal choice. By indicating the desire to be considered for a contract, a teacher is not committed to accepting the contract should it be offered. However, should it be offered and the teacher declines, the district is not able to offer the contract to another teacher by statute. The categories on the survey include teacher attendance, teacher or license support evaluation, student achievement data when available, advanced teaching credentials, service to high needs areas, teacher recognition awards, leader of teachers, and extracurricular leadership. Teachers on a performance plan or in receipt of a formal disciplinary memo from July 2012 to December 2013 will be ineligible. Let's take a look at the categories outlined on the next 3 pages. There are 100 available points from all categories. As a reminder, the number of positions is prorated by each school and central office. Therefore, if there are more examples possible for a category in a secondary school, remember that an elementary teacher is being considered with other elementary staff members. The first category is teacher attendance on student days. This is the one category that will be populated through timekeeper information following district receipt of an interest form. Points will be assigned based on an average yearly absence rate, considering the 3 calendar years from January 2011 through December 2013. Teachers may indicate if FMLA was used during a calendar year to exempt the year from the 3-year average, provided they received credible service for the year. Timekeeper will automatically exempt absences keyed for professional development, jury duty, military leave, or a religious holiday. The second category is 40 points for the summative evaluation. Depending upon your position, you will be guided to a question to report your 2012-2013 evaluation ratings for your evaluation instrument. Principals will have a list with summative scores to answer questions and for confirmation. The maximum score for all evaluations is 40. The proficient at standard score for all evaluations totals 20. If you are a teacher with EBOS teacher effect scores for 2012-2013, there are 15 points for blue and 10 points for green. If you are a teacher without EBOS teacher effect scores for 2012-2013, a score adjustment will be made for comparability purposes. Points are available for advanced teaching credentials. Teachers and licensed support staff can earn 1 point for a master's degree or 2 points for a doctorate. 1 point is added for national board. The following category pertains to serving in a critical or high need area. 4 points are associated with any of the following teaching assignments between July 1, 2012 and December 31, 2013, up to a total of 8 points. EC, secondary math or science, advanced placement, health occupations, secondary teacher in 2 content areas at the same time, or an elementary combination class. 4 points can be earned with teacher recognition and awards. A school award can be 1 point, a district award is 2 points, and state or national awards are 3 points. More than 1 award can be considered from July 1st, 2012 through December 31st, 2013. Examples of these awards, and there may be others, include Teacher of the Year, Impact Through Education, Teacher Leader Cohort, Publications, etc. Have you supported other teachers in your school to be better teachers of students? Up to 10 points is available in this category. You can receive 2 points each for any of the following activities between July 1st, 2012 and December 31st, 2013. PLC facilitator, sit chair, sit member, department or grade level chair, community partner liaison, school PD presenter, mentor, lead mentor, cooperating teacher, curriculum writer, district PD presenter, district committee, or advisory board. We know extracurricular activities are important factors for students in establishing a bond with their school. 5 points are available for serving as coach, a club sponsor, or a band director.
Now, we would like to share with you our proposal timeline. Principals received this overview at their pre-K-12 principal meeting on January 28th. Between January 28th and February 3rd, principals are meeting with staff at school sites to share the plan. Board of Education members who received a draft overview at their retreat earlier this month will hear this presentation at the February 3rd board meeting and will vote on February 10th. If approved, a link will be made available to staff beginning February 11th through February 28th to confirm the eligibility for consideration and whether or not they are interested in receiving a 4-year contract. Those interested in accepting a contract, if offered, will complete the remainder of the survey. Staff members will receive additional information regarding the specifics of this process on February 11th. Principals will review the information from their school for accuracy, consulting with teachers as necessary. During April and/or May, the board will receive a list to approve of contract offers. Contract offers will be made, and a final date will be established for their return. Questions are invited at this time. If you are a staff member viewing this presentation, principals will collect any questions which are not answered in your meeting and forward them to the district office. A Q&A will be posted on the Human Resources Department webpage as questions are received and answered, so everyone can benefit. We thank you for taking the time to learn about this process and for the variety of ways that you contribute to success of our children.
Welcome to this presentation on implementation of Senate. Thank you. We welcome any questions you have at this time. As was indicated, we have quite a few members of our committee behind me tonight, sitting up there with you. You have Jeff Phillips and Courtney Smith, who are also on the committee, and Sarah Stone is certainly familiar with this legislation and came to some of our meetings as well.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. And for the committee members that are here, we thank you and value your time, and we appreciate you being here and the time that you spent to put this together. And we will start with board questions, and we will start with Mr. Walter.
Thanks. Again, I'd like to also express my thanks to the commissioners for approving the 1% for all teachers and non-certified staff. I think that does make a difference and just show that they care. And I also want to thank just all the work that was put into this. I mean, 3 months to come up with something that we're mandated by the state to do, and really make it as positive as possible. Like you were saying, turning lemons into lemonade as best you can. Where it's there designed to support student success, as you said, to honor teachers who go above and beyond, and I think that's a good thing, opportunity to do that. Question I have: you had this presentation you provided the teachers. Did that weather that we've had and the cancellations, did that affect it? Has everyone got it? Are they all aware of this now, or is it still in the process of informing teachers?
So at a few schools, naturally, the weather did have some impact, and we've asked principals to show it this week if they have not seen it yet. We also have it available on the website on the Human Resources front page, so individuals can go themselves and listen to it again if they'd like to.
So they haven't seen it yet, they still have opportunity.
I think most schools have shown it, but we did, certainly tell principals we would work with them if the weather interfered with things.
Okay, and the value for the teacher is $500 a year, which is about what, one and a half average of 1.5%, or is it a year, or is it how much? Is it like
so an average teacher probably makes about 30, maybe 40,000 a year. Right.
So it's about a 5% increase over the 4-year period, is that, or,
Yes.
so they're balancing that over the risk of giving up the
1.2 per year. Right, 1.2% per year.
Okay, so, but we're asking them to take the 1.2% as a risk of giving up tenure? Is that what they're risking by doing that?
The legislation does state that the person must rescind tenure if they do accept the 4-year contract. The legislation also does contain that tenure would go away for all personnel at the end of 4 years. So if the legislation were to stand any court challenges, tenure would end at the end of the 4 years. At the same time,
you also said it was
ended.
yeah, it's in the legal process, so it may or may not. So there's a risk there either way if they make that decision now. And it's only funded for one year. Is that what?
The state does make biennial budgets. I think it's certainly the state's intent from what they have said to fund it for 4 years. However, different legislators do come and go, so we don't have an adopted budget for later years in the contract.
And I was a little bit confused on, you said we're going to survey the teachers and then there's applications being made available. Is it two separate things, or we're trying to get the feedback on who's interested and then do the applications, or do they do the applications if they're interested?
So we're using our K-12 Insight Survey instrument to communicate with teachers who would be eligible to be considered. The first 2 questions on the survey, one is to review what's required to be eligible, and they confirm that they are in fact eligible based on that. The second question does ask them if they are interested in accepting such a contract if it were to be offered to them.
And that survey would go out after we approve this?
And then yes, this would occur if the board does approve this next Monday. This would go out on Tuesday. Then, depending on how the person answers the question as to whether they are interested or not, if they are not interested, the survey ends at that time. We would collect the information on how many people perhaps expressed they were not interested, and we would have that as a reportable statistic. For those who do make a choice and would like to continue, then it asks questions that pertain to the categories that we presented to you tonight to get that information for us to be able to make the calculations.
What's the window for that survey?
Right now, the window for that survey is it's the last 2 weeks, essentially in February. After we collect that information, if we determine some people have not responded that are eligible, we will certainly make attempts to find out if those people are interested or not.
So you're trying to get everybody to answer,
Yes.
at least answer the survey?
Yes, at least answer those first 2 questions.
And you can get some of that information to us prior to the next board meeting, or not next board meeting, next month's board meeting, or is it, or in a Friday report or something like that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much all I have. I appreciate the work that went into it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walter. Mr. Shoemaker, do you have comments or questions?
But of course. Well, you know how I feel about evaluations and the fairness and the whole process. And I just want to tell you, I really appreciate the effort that was put into it. I know it wasn't easy. The next piece is getting the trust. And I think that in what I read in some of our readings is it's about 360 potential candidates for this. Is that what our limit is?
Right. About 360 contracts. I think we've continued to refine that list. I think it's 358 to be exact.
All right. And of that, is that based on the total population or teacher population, certified population of our district, or is it based on the certified population that has 3 years or more in our district? How does that work?
It's based on the certified population who have the last 3 consecutive years in our district. And the way the state statute reads is that for each district, it is 3 consecutive years in that district.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that because I do know of. I was talking with a teacher this weekend, and they were telling me that there were some teachers that had moved here from other districts and didn't quite have the time in this county. In fact, they didn't either. But So they were ineligible, and
And I'm certain there are strong teachers in that category.
yeah. In putting this together, we may or may not get enough teachers because it's based on school, pretty much based on school, or there's some schools that got lumped together, but for the most part it's school-based. Do we have an alternate plan if we're not able to get enough, get the 358 applications or more? And of course, they're all based on, you have to have 25% per school. But what if you get a fair number from one school, but not enough from another school? Do you have some way to mitigate that at this point?
The committee has considered those questions. If we did not get enough from one school, then any remaining contracts from that school would go back into the district pool. Once we have a better handle on this, if we do have people who are still interested at other sites, we would redistribute the positions beginning with the highest decimal point portion of a position that was kind of next in line for a school to get an additional position.
So who's going to actually do the tally?
So we're working very closely with the accountability department. Once the survey is completed, it will print out a summary of the responses of each teacher, and each of those papers will go back to the principal for their review to confirm the accuracy of that. We have given two principals a list of evaluation results so that is readily at hand. Attendance information is actually coming through the finance department, and then the accountability department is completing this process of identifying people based on the responses after we have the confirmation.
Okay. As we talked about at our retreat, one of the most important things is the trust factor of the employees of us, because giving up tenure seemed to be like a little insulated little blanket that you held around, but for many years, our district has been making decisions not based on tenure but based on performance. And have you done a survey to find out how they perceive us and how we've executed at that level? Have we been fair? Do we have do the employees or the teachers have a feeling that we've been arbitrary in the way we've done things? And have we done that? Because part of that will be an inhibitor. If they feel like we've been arbitrary, they won't sign up. And I really want to make sure that every teacher who has the opportunity to sign up signs up and doesn't feel like we're going to, and I can't speak for any other district, only Cabarrus County, that we as Cabarrus County, that we're fair, we do things well, and as you move on, that Glenda will continue into the footsteps that you've set before us. But I just really wonder, have you talked with them on that level? And perhaps maybe Nick could come up and share his thoughts on that. I would just like, since you're on the committee, Nick, and since you're a representative, I would like to hear your feelings on that and how we get the word out, because I do want to make sure people feel like we're trustworthy.
To tell you the truth, I mean, it has been difficult for all of us. I can't just speak for myself, but it was a grueling process to go and to make this contract available for all teachers and to have them, how can I say it? It's almost like filling out an application. And we are trying to find the 25% of the teachers that are, worthy of having this contract should they want it. I know from all of you, you probably think that it should be flipped, that 75% of teachers should have it more so than just 25%. And yes, being that as it may, we can't do that. You are correct that legislation is being, in the courts right now. We don't know when it's going to be. From my perspective, I mean, I already did the survey itself, testing it through the waters, and the numbers, as much as I try to, make it presentable, try to tweak it, I won't know for certain would I be eligible because I don't know the exact numbers of people at my school that will be qualified. That's the only concern that I would have as a teacher, just knowing, am I available, will I be qualified for it based on my points? Will some of my teachers have more points? Some teachers might have less points. Are they going for it? Are they not going for it? So we don't know exactly who is. The other problem that I'm seeing as a teacher, too, is looking at other teachers, and we want to keep that level of morale that we want to share with each other information. So if I know that another teacher of mine is going for it, my question is, are they still going to share information with me through our PLCs? Because that's the other thing. The whole point of professional learning communities is that we learn as a community. And so are they going to hold back information? Are they going to hold back the sharing? So we did our best in what we, can speak for myself and others, that we did what we could. And it's up to the teachers to decide whether or not they wish to fill us or not. And they just go with their instinct.
Thank you, Nick. Because, one of the things that I see with this exercise, and I'm sure that it came up in your meeting as y'all discussed this, is the other piece. Once the awards take place, there are going to be those who weren't able to get awarded, so they'll feel, left out. But then those who do get awarded may be perceived in different lights, or they may have built up something in their mind about how they'll be perceived because they kind of, pardon this expression, kind of sold out, and gave up their tenure. And on the confidentiality, once the awards are made, it will be between them and the district as to whether they were the ones that were in the 25%, or will their names literally be open for public record?
I'd like to make a couple statements, and then I want to ask Sarah to speak to that point in just a moment. One of the things I think the committee has tried to stress is personal choice. I don't feel that I'm in a position to make a decision for others, right. And I think that was one of the things we tried to do. Nick spoke to collaboration and the fact that we want teachers to help one another, and that I do view that as a strength of our district. One of the reasons I think there's a category in here, leader of teachers, that you see is because there are points awarded for being just that kind of person, going above and beyond, being a mentor, being a cooperating teacher, serving on the SIT team. So what I believe you will see here is that the members of the committee spent a lot of time trying to infuse those beliefs into this system and not just have it be evaluation and stop there. Sarah, do you have an interpretation yet of whether you believe that is a public list once adopted?
I think that's a very good question. When I was checking the revised statutes to see whether or not this was addressed in the any changes made to what is defined as being included in a personnel file. In my very quick read, I have not seen any language indicating that it's changed. Therefore, we would default to what is currently considered public information within someone's personnel file, which does include the terms of any past or current contract. So to the extent that type of information is currently public information, if a teacher has tenure or doesn't have tenure, or for our school administrators who are currently hired under contract, the terms of those contracts, to the extent that information is currently public information, these new contracts, under my first blush of reading, would follow under the same analysis and also be public information.
Okay. All right, so let me see, one other. All right, I've had all my questions answered. Thank you, and I appreciate all that y'all have done. You've done a really good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. And Mr. Shue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a lot to say about this because I got a pretty good feel of it when I went to the law conference last year, and that's when they first broke all this to us. But I appreciate you and your committee. And obviously, it's going to be up to Glenda to carry the ball here, not too awful long from now. And all of this will be, falling into place. But, for me to sit here and question such capable people that's on this committee would not be the right thing to do. So I'm behind what you've done. I appreciate how you've incorporated the Cabarrus County Schools' beliefs into this, how you've well explained it. You've explained very well what our objectives are. I think it's more than fair, and without being redundant, it's making lemonade out of lemon juice, and it's another one of the state mandates, state changes that came down upon us that we're having to deal with. And so based on that, we're team players to some degree, and this time we're going to be. And we just look forward to seeing the numbers as they come in. I'd like to maybe in a Friday report, when we start receiving the applications you send out, we'd like to maybe follow up, sort of keep an eye on how many are being actually applying and how many are accepted and all of that, sort of just to help us stay abreast of what's going on with it, because obviously it's something new. Tenure been around forever until now, and so this is new for us. And so I'd like to at least look at it periodically, and a Friday report would be fine with me on that, if that can be done.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shue. Mr. Harrison, do you have some comments?
This is a bitter pill. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Dr. Phillips.
Despite being on the committee, I'm going to say more than he just did.
Well, I was going to say, Lynn said we were team players. And I thought, well, maybe we better wait till Dr. Phillips speaks, because he has his attorney on speed dial based on the previous comments we had.
Actually, I already have asked our attorney for an opinion on this one. Anyway, this is... I went into this committee with deep reservations because I think this is a flawed public policy. But I think, as I agree with Dr. Shepard, we've made the absolute best out of a bad public law. Now, some people would say, well, how could you say this is a bad public law? You keep saying that teachers need more money, they need more pay, and this is a way to give them more pay. How can this be bad? It's because it's just like what we just talked about with the EOGs, except the cut point is not 77%, the cut point is 75%. And if you're below that 75%, if you're in the 74th percentile of teachers, we're going to treat you as if you are at the absolute bottom. You get nothing. You don't have to go to summer school, but you get no pay raise. Now, and the reality is that the cut point actually is not 75%. Because of the high turnover rate that we have in this state and in our district with teachers, the fact that we are excluding teachers who have not been with us at least 3 years means that in reality only 1/6 of our licensed teachers will be offered these contracts. Not 25%, 16.7%. All right? This is not how it's done in the business world. I can say that with absolute confidence because this past week I had to make the decisions on the 14 people that report to me that on what their pay raises would be for next year. And here was the guidance that I got from our HR department. Jeff, you have a pool of money. That pool of money, by happy coincidence, amounts to 1.5% of the base salaries of your staff. So if I want to, I can give it out proportionally. Everybody gets 1.5% increase. I wonder where we heard 1.5% recently. They don't say, Jeff, you can only give that to the employees who have been here at least 3 years. They don't say, Jeff, you can only give that to the top 25% of your staff. They say, Jeff, parcel it out as you see best according to where these employees stand on their pay profile and on their performance. So if I have a younger employee who is a top performer and is low in the pay grade, I can give them more than 1.5%. If I have an employee that's well above the 50 percentile in pay and is below 50 percentile in performance, they might not get 1.5%. That's how it works in the business world, and I wish the state legislature would give us the flexibility to do that with our own employees.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. I appreciate your comments, and
Sorry, I
Go
did
right-
have one other
go
thing.
right
That
ahead.
relates to my question to the attorney. The question came up about the trust factor and what could we do to encourage employees who are concerned about losing the protections of tenure but would like to have this increase. I asked if it would be possible for us to adopt a local policy that says that any employee, any teacher that takes one of these 4-year contracts would still be allowed the protection of due process with a hearing in the event of a dismissal, just as they would have under their career status. And at least your colleague, Mr. Enriquez, indicated that he felt that was within our power to do that. Did you want to elaborate?
Certainly,
confirm?
certainly, and I will confirm that. I think it's important to remember that under the proposed revision, they'll still be entitled to a hearing before this board under the statutory change. What a teacher will lose when they give up tenure status or it goes away at the end of the 4 years is the ability for the case manager hearing before the hearing or the hearing officer hearing prior to coming before the board. And so to answer the question you raised with Mr. Henriquez a few days ago, yes, you all as a board could decide as a local policy that you wanted to institute something similar to the hearing officer provision for these teachers who do give up their career status prior to the hearing before the board to mirror the protections they have with their current career status.
So anyway, my suggestion would be that we ask the policy committee to look at the possibility of adopting a policy or proposing a policy that would allow us to provide that extra protection to the teachers that accept a 4-year contract, particularly in light of the fact that we don't know if this is really going to be funded all 4 years, and so then what happens? And at least if we can tell them, look, you're not really losing anything by, you're not putting anything at risk, that might encourage more people to apply.